So you're dealing with heartburn, indigestion, GERD, and it's driving you nuts. You've been taking medication for a long time, and your goal is to get off of it, right? Maybe you picked up the omeprazole, the pantoprazole your doctor prescribed to you. You read the back of it, and it said, don't take longer than 6 weeks, but they never really gave you a plan to get off of it. So what I want to propose today is a different approach to treating heartburn and indigestion. Now, this is something I see clinically all the time in the office, and everybody's been told that it's because there's too much acid that we have this problem. What I want to tell you is that more often than not, the problem is not that we have too much acid, it's that we don't have enough acid. And let me explain why. So what happens, basically, the stomach requires acid in order to break down food, particularly our proteins. Stomach's the most acidic place in our body. If we don't have acid in our stomach, we can't break our food down. Now, one of the biggest things that people deal with on a regular basis is stress. Stress can be either physical, chemical, or emotional. And it doesn't really matter where that stress is coming from because physiologically our body's going to respond the same way. Easiest way to think about stress is think about in our primitive days running away from a lion, right? So you're in your camp, you're cooking dinner, a lion comes into camp and you've got to hightail it out of there. Think about everything that has to happen in your body in order to get away from the lion. Do we care about breaking our food down? Do we care about producing more hormones? Do we care about anything else other than getting all of our blood flow to our muscles, increasing our heart rate, dilating our pupils, getting everything in order that we need in order to get away from the lion? Now, in the same example, think about what happens when we've fled the situation, we're safe. Well, once the threat's gone, all of those things come back to normal. Blood flow starts going back to our internal organs, our pupils start to constrict again, and we start focusing more on rest and digest, hormone production, things like that, healing and repairing. The problem is that we're not just up against acute stresses like that. We have stress everywhere, and stress is killing us. Stress from our parents, stress from our family, our kids, stress from work, school, the environmental stressors like the air we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, all the pesticides and chemicals on the food. Stress is everywhere. And what happens is when we're in this chronically stressed out state, our body's not prioritizing digestion. Our body's prioritizing everything else. And what happens is that causes a reduction in stomach acid. Now, the way that this ties back into GERD, because you just said, wait a minute, we get burning because there's so much acid in the stomach. Well, I want you to think about this. The stomach is the most acidic place in your body. Your body's smart. It doesn't make mistakes. It's designed to protect itself. And so we have these really cool cells within our stomach called goblet cells. Now, goblet cells are stimulated by acid to produce mucus. That mucosal barrier is what actually protects the stomach lining from acid, right? And so I want you to think about this. Think about what happens when we don't have enough stomach acid for a long time. Well, if it's the acid that increases the production of the protective mucosal barrier, and we take the acid away because of things like chronic stress, well, what's going to happen? We're not going to have that stimulation of the mucosal barrier. And then what happens when we do have to prioritize on digestion? When we eat something that's really spicy, we eat something that's really acidic, we eat something, a heavy protein meal, something like that, where acid has to increase again in order to digest our food. Well, now we've just increased in acid in an environment that's not set up to protect it because of low levels of acid for such a long period of time. And so the mechanism that I'm proposing to you is that your GERD, your heartburn, your indigestion is not because of too much acid. Yes, acid's causing the symptoms, but acid's not the problem. The problem is that we've had chronic low levels of acid that's depleted that mucosal protective barrier, and now anytime that acid level increases, we get the burning, we get the burping, we get the heartburn, the indigestion, all of those negative symptoms. And so you go to your doctor tells you, well, it's acid causing the problem, let's just give you something like a proton pump inhibitor. Well, what's a proton pump inhibitor? Proton pumps are the cells and the mechanisms within your cell that create acid. So if we're inhibiting those cells that create acid, we're going to reduce acid. And if acid's what's burning and we reduce it, you feel great. The problem is we know this is bad. If you read the back of the label, it says, don't take longer for more than 6 weeks. But again, did your doctor tell you to stop it or your doctor told you to just take it? I literally just saw a patient the other day who's been taking a PPI for 10 years. Now, why is the acid important? Well, the acid is involved in breaking down all of our food. So we take something that lowers acid, you feel a little bit better, but what did we just do? We reduce the acid that we need to break down our food. So now what happens? Well, the food's going to sit in your stomach for longer. You're going to feel really kind of full, really heavy in the stomach, especially after heavy protein meals. You're also going to take longer to pass that food through. Food may pass undigested into the small intestine. It's going to put more stress on your small intestine. Now, let's think about what happens after we get through the stomach that we need acid for, right? So, I'm sure everybody's heard of the gallbladder, right? The gallbladder, a little guy attached kind of to the liver in this area here. Gallbladder's responsibility is to store bile. Now, bile is the way that the liver excretes and eliminates all of its toxins, either through bile into the gut, out into the toilet, or back into the urine through the kidneys. So that's kind of how we clear toxins, and that's for another video. But if we think about the other thing that we have within our bile are what's called bile salts. Those bile salts are very important for creating what's called a lysosome, or creating an emulsification layer around the fats so that we can absorb it. So if we think about what happens, you wash a pan, you cook with oil, right? And you go run the pan under water. It doesn't just wash away. You have to use something like soap to emulsify the oil to get rid of it. So the bile salts are essentially emulsifying. They're forming little kind of clumps of fat that we can then absorb. So if we don't have bile, we're not going to be able to absorb our fats. The key is it's acid from the stomach in the chyme that gets secreted into the small intestine that stimulates the gallbladder to contract to excrete that bile. So now what happens? So we got some heartburn, we got some burning. We took something that dropped our acid levels down. Now we can't break down protein in the stomach. Food sitting in the stomach for longer, it's passing undigested into the small intestine, and now the bile is not being signaled to be secreted from the gallbladder. So if we're not signaling the gallbladder to empty, things are going to sit in the gallbladder for longer. They're going to get sludged up. We may get sludge in the gallbladder. We may get stones that form because we're not constantly and rhythmically contracting to get that out of there. Now I may end up with gallbladder issues. But what we also may end up with is vitamin deficiencies because we can't absorb our fats. Fats bring in vitamins A, D, E, and K into your body. Those are your fat-soluble vitamins. If we can't absorb fat, we can't absorb those vitamins in our diet. Then we're going to have a whole host of other issues. We also have undigested food sitting in the small intestine. Now we're going to have bacteria that are going to come in and they're going to start to feed on that. We can get bacterial overgrowth. And so all this to say, acid in your stomach is so important for all of these different reasons. And if we take something like a PPI, it's going to disrupt our digestion in more ways than just at the level of the stomach. And again, we know this. That's why it says don't take for longer than 6 weeks at a time. But again, if you're watching this video, you've probably been taking it for longer than that, or someone told you should take it and you're doing a little bit more research. And that's the goal of the channel here, is that we want to be able to provide you information, provide you an alternative approach to what you're being told so that you can make the best informed decisions for your own health. Because if no one tells you there's an alternative, you can't make an informed decision, right? And so that's what I want to be able to do, is allow you to make an informed decision. Smash like on this video, subscribe to the channel, make sure that you're staying up to date and can make all those decisions for your own health. But let's get back to the gallbladder, to the stomach acid, to the situation, because we didn't solve anything. I just told you that maybe it's not high acid that's causing the burning or causing the GERD. Maybe it's chronic low acid, but how do we fix this? Because no one wants to deal with heartburn. No one wants to deal with indigestion. We want to feel good. So number one is what we talk about that decreases acid. So if you think about it, we have to get the acid levels up to stimulate the cells in the gut or the cells in the stomach to produce a mucosal layer to protect the stomach. But we can't just increase acid levels because we get burning. So we've got to kind of take a step back. So what else can we do that's going to increase the mucosal barrier production in the stomach? Well, we know that those goblet cells get stimulated by acid. We also know there's several other things that can help to increase that protective mucosal barrier. Now, first and foremost, before I ever talk about supplements, I always want to talk about lifestyle, because I believe that supplements can be very important, but supplements alone are not going to solve your problems. You can't out-supplement a lifestyle problem. So if we can work on giving you good, helpful lifestyle tips, that's going to limit the amount of supplements we have to take. So let's talk about food. What food can we eat that will help to increase that mucosal barrier? And the answer is okra. I live in Florida. In the South, there's a lot of okra. You can get it all over the place. Some of the other northern states, maybe you've never even heard of okra, but okra is awesome. I don't know how to describe it other than kind of a slender green tube looking thing, kind of like a seed. Uh, it tastes awesome. I love okra. Okra is very kind of mucusy, and it actually helps to increase that mucosal barrier. So let's talk about supplements now. So say you either don't have access to okra or you have zero interest in eating okra. What else can we do? There's two supplements that can both help to stimulate the production of that mucosal barrier outside of the normal regulation of stomach acid. Those two supplements are chamomile, kind of like the chamomile tea that you drink, and slippery elm, which comes from the bark of a slippery elm tree. Now, both of these work in similar ways. Let's just talk about chamomile first. So chamomile will stimulate the goblet cells to produce mucus. Now, the chamomile tea, is that going to help you? And unfortunately, the answer to that question is no, because chamomile tea is a hot water extraction. When we talk about using herbs in our office, we use liquid herbs. The reason we use those liquids is number one, it's an alcohol extraction. It pulls different nutrients and constituents out of the plant than something like a hot water extraction would with your tea. It's also very, very potent and very strong, and we know it's going to have a therapeutic effect. Your tea may make you feel good. It may be warming and relaxing, but the tea, unfortunately, is not going to have a very therapeutic effect on your body. So if you want to use it to relax at night, awesome, great, do that. Definitely helps with that. If you want to use chamomile in order to help protect your stomach, we're going to need something a little bit stronger, which is where a liquid form of chamomile will come in very handy. The other one is slippery elm. Now, I use these interchangeably a lot, and I'll tell you the biggest reason that I'll put somebody on slippery elm over chamomile is if you have a ragweed allergy, because chamomile is in the ragweed family. And sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we get really bad seasonal allergies. If that's you, I would advise you to go towards something more like slippery elm, just so that we don't have the potential of creating that type of an allergic response. Because if we're creating a histamine response, well, that's a stress response as well. We're going to kind of get back into that stress pathway. We're not going to be helping ourselves. So those are two great options to start increasing that protective mucosal layer. Because again, we can't increase acid until we can increase the protective layer. Now, while we're working on increasing that mucosal barrier, what did we say way back at the very beginning was the number one thing that causes low stomach acid? And it's stress. And this is the problem. If we can't get the stress under control, it doesn't matter what we do with the supplements. We're going to have to stay on them forever because we've never really dug down and got to the root of the problem. So while we're working on building that mucosal layer, we also have to be really, really diligent about reducing our stress, whether it's meditation, whether it's working out in a different way, whether it's kind of having hard conversations with people, whether it's moving or quitting our job. All of those things are very real scenarios that we've had to talk to patients about. We've had patients that have left terrible abusive relationships. We've had patients that have moved because they've had mold. We've had patients that have quit their job. And of course, that's not going to be our first option, right? But sometimes that type of thing has to happen. And so just know that we're never going to get anywhere if we can't get the stress under control. So let's talk about getting the stress under control while we're working to rebuild that protective mucosal barrier. So how do we know if we've rebuilt the layer? Well, first thing is we're going to start kind of taking away some of the support, the PPIs, the Tums, the over-the-counter antacids, that type of stuff. Now, if you were prescribed a PPI by your doctor, make sure that you have a conversation with your doctor before you start trying to come off of it. And what you're going to notice is that you may get burning and things that come back. And patients that we work with all the time, they do get burning. If they've been on it, a PPI for 10 years, they aren't going to just be able to come off of it and feel great. So what types of things can we do to kind of support and ease that heartburn and indigestion in a way that's not going to affect digestion as well? So aloe. Aloe vera juice is awesome. I'm not talking about the aloe plant you just bought at Home Depot, and I'm not talking about the aloe vera juice that they have in the international aisle. I'm talking about pure filtered aloe vera juice with no preservatives, no chemicals, no flavors, colors, anything like that. The brand that we typically recommend is Lily of the Desert, and we get their whole leaf preservative-free aloe juice. Now think about the inflammation that you get on your skin after a sunburn. It's the same thing that's happening in the stomach. That acid is burning your stomach. It's creating inflammation just like the sun burns your skin and it creates inflammation. And what do? You put aloe on it. It's very soothing. It feels very good. Same thing with your gut. If you've got a lot of inflammation in the gut, if you've got some of that burning in the stomach, aloe will be your best friend because it will help to calm down that inflammatory response, calm down that burning that you're feeling. The other thing I recommend, instead of using something like a Tums or an antacid to stop the burning, is drink alkaline water, because the burning is because we have too much acidity in the stomach. Alkaline water is alkaline. It's the opposite of acid. So if we combine those two together, it's going to increase the pH, decrease the burning. So you can use alkaline water, you can use aloe as you're transitioning off of those supplements or off of the antacids, off the PPIs, in order to kind of limit some of that burning. And then what's the long-term strategy? Well, long-term, we talked about getting rid of the stress, but we also have to work on increasing acid production again. And so some of the best things that you can do at home are apple cider vinegar. Now, apple cider vinegar is very acidic, so when we drink that, we're going to increase the acidity in the stomach. We may get burning, and that's okay. That's why we have the aloe. That's why we have the alkaline water, those types of things. So if you get the burning that goes along with that, just know you can take some aloe, you can take some alkaline water, that will help. That also can be used as kind of a litmus test to gauge where we're at in that healing process with that mucosal barrier. Now, typically what I'll tell people to do is use a little bit of apple cider vinegar every couple weeks and kind of gauge how your stomach feels when you take that. If you take 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar after 1 week and you get really bad burning, we just aren't there yet. And that's okay, because this process will take time. So every week or so, try adding a little bit more apple cider vinegar and try seeing kind of how your body responds to that. And then what I want you to do is continue taking that with every meal. So once we get to the point that you feel okay when you take it, great. Now let's try to get that acid in with every meal so we can get back to the way that our body's supposed to work with digestion. Once we can reduce the stress, we shouldn't have to rely on external acid. But if we never get that stress under control, we're going to have to do things to help acidify the stomach to get that digestive process working. Now, say you're like me and you hate apple cider vinegar. That's okay. There's supplements for that. And that's, again, exactly where supplements are helpful, because supplements are designed to supplement diet and things you're not getting from either your diet or your lifestyle. So let's talk about supplements. You can get apple cider vinegar supplements. That's fine. Don't get the apple cider vinegar gummies. Don't get the ones with colors and flavors and sweeteners and sugar and junk in them. You don't need that. Just get an encapsulated apple cider vinegar. You can also get betaine HCl. Now, betaine HCl is a little stronger. That's why I always recommend starting with apple cider vinegar. It also doesn't have all the other nutrients and things that are in apple cider vinegar that help to support other things in your body. So at the Wellness Way, we have a supplement called Digestion. Digestion has apple cider vinegar and betaine HCl. So you're going to get the benefits of the apple cider vinegar, you're going to get the benefits of the acid, and you're not going to have to taste it. So that's an option as well. And typically I recommend that for people who travel a lot, people who hate the taste of apple cider vinegar, but they need that support. People who aren't breaking proteins down, that type of stuff. So let's recap. So kind of the story of how we got here is lots of chronic stress that caused low stomach acid. Low stomach acid led to a decreased production of mucosal barrier. No mucosal barrier means that the stomach is now vulnerable to increases in acidity, and the increases in acidity burn the stomach. How do we reverse that? Well, let's just reverse engineer it. Let's work on repairing the mucosal barrier. Let's work on slowly increasing acid levels, and let's work on decreasing stress. And if we can do all of those things, we can come off of the PPIs, we can stop having to rely on Tums, we can stop dealing with the chronic GERD, indigestion, heartburn, reflux, all the things. And we can help get you back on track to normal digestion and a normal life. So if you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button, check out more videos, because again, my vision, my goal is to create a community of people who can all come together to get the knowledge that they need to help make informed health decisions for yourself and for your family. Thanks for watching.